thanks for coming out today to the Lit Fest on this great, cool Chicago day. We have a cool topic to talk about on a cool day, and really a multiplicity of topics. I'm Owen Youngman. I'm the Knight Professor of Digital Media Strategy at Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. And here with me on the panel, we have three authors who have new books that look at various aspects of the intersection of technology, science, and culture. From my right, we have Tom Bissell, whose book, Extra Lives, is subtitled Why Video Games Matter. To his right is Jack Fuller, formerly the president of Tribune Publishing, whose book, What is Happening to News, is subtitled The Information Explosion and the Crisis in Journalism. And then finally, on my far right, we've got Nicholas Carr, whose new book, What the Shallows, is subtitled What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. And this topic, in its various forms, has a lot of currency right now. And I almost can't pick up the newspaper without encountering some of these ideas. And as props, for example, a week ago yesterday, the Wall Street Journal gave over the front of its Saturday weekend journal section to a counterpoint between Nick Carr and Clay Shirky that was asking, does the internet make you smarter or does the internet make you dumber? It didn't appear to take a point of view, but 2 days later, the New York Times devoted an enormous amount of space, 2 open pages inside, which to those of us who used to be in the newspaper game is a whole heck of a lot, to a story, Hooked on Gadgets and Paying a Mental Price. And there was really no ambiguity there. When you read this story, you were meant to be scared by the impact of distraction. And then just today, I found out I don't have to worry about this anymore because the Times, in its business section, gave over the front to a story about the Singularity, about Singularity University, which sees a merger of the technology and the mind and says, everything's going to be fine. We're all going to live forever. So I'm not sure I'm ready to go all the way there, but my interest has certainly been piqued, and my mind has been questioning the details of just what does it mean that we're in this world where so much information is available to us, so many stimuli are acting upon us, technology has so dramatically altered what we do. And in Nick Carr's book, one of the many sentences that brought me up short and made me start to further consider this impact was the following one. The price we pay, he writes, to assume technology's power is alienation. Do you think that alienation is a necessary byproduct of our winding up bombarded by all these stimuli and the way that it causes us to walk away from the way that we have thought and learned for generations?
I do, although I'm using alienation not in the kind of metaphysical sense, but in a very simple sense that technologies alienate us in different ways from ourselves. So if you put on a pair of shoes, you protect your feet from the ground, but you lose touch with the ground. Similarly, if you get into a car to drive, instead of walking somewhere, you get there faster, but you lose some of the joy and some of the connection to the natural world. And I think that happens with every technology, but I think it happens in some ways the most extreme and the most personal and the most intimate ways with media and other technologies that we use to think with. And we saw that with certainly the book and the clock and the map, and I think we're seeing it again with the internet and other digital technologies. On the one hand, they give us, enormous convenience. They give us access to far more information than we ever had access to before. But on the other hand, like other technologies of that sort, they emphasize a certain mode of thought and de-emphasize another mode of thought. And I think what the net and related technologies are doing are emphasizing the side of our mind that wants to skim and scan and browse and jump around and gather as much information as possible, a very kind of primitive side of our mind in a way. But what it's de-emphasizing is a very different mode of thought, slower, quieter, more solitary, the mode of thought that underpins contemplation, introspection, reflection, deep reading. And I believe we're seeing on a personal level and on a societal level a shift away from those modes of thought to this ever faster, ever more superficial, in my view, but also, you know, a mode of thought that has other attractions and is very seductive. My fear is that as we lose our capacity for the more contemplative modes of thought, we're going to lose something very important to us as individuals, but also one of the underpinnings of culture in general.
The subtitle, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, is both metaphorical and real, right? You write about how the adoption of certain technologies over time has demonstrably changed the sizes of different parts of our brains. The hippocampus, I think, is
Yeah.
one. So what do you think the internet is physically doing to brains right now?
Well, what neuroscientists have discovered in the last few decades is that the human brain, even the adult human brain, is very adaptable. It's very malleable. When we get into some habit of thinking or action, those habits are encoded, in a sense, in our brain through the strengthening of certain neural pathways and even the growth of new neurons and new synapses. And on the other hand, when we stop performing some way of thinking or some way of behavior, we begin to lose our ability, our capacity for that kind of activity. And not only lose it at a superficial level, but kind of the actual brain circuits that support it begin to weaken and in some cases fall apart. And so what I think the net is doing not only as a matter of culture and a matter of habit, but really down deep in the cellular level of the brain, is strengthening those neural functions and neural pathways that support our ability to follow lots of stimuli at once, like we do when we're online or playing video games or surfing the web in general, and making us better at that, giving us greater facility to keep track of a lot of incoming input simultaneously. But what we're losing, and again at a cellular level, is the ability to pay attention. Paying attention is not a natural state of the brain. You have to train yourself to focus on one thing because your brain kind of wants to be scatterbrained and keep track of a lot of things. And so if we don't practice keep paying attention to one thing, that ability goes away, and I think goes away quite quickly.
Jack, you write at some length about distraction, and in thinking about some of the pieces of that, it has had an impact not just on the brain. You write extensively about neuroscience. You spend a couple years studying neuroscience in order to try to make connections between how we absorb news and information and the way that it's transmitted by journalists. In a way, sometimes I feel your book is as much addressing what is our brain doing with the internet as much what is the internet is doing with our brains.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The part of there are many ways you can look at the question. I look at what is unchanging and not particularly plastic about our brains, and I really was looking at how the changed environment that fundamental part of our brain is living in is affected by how the change affects it. To me, our minds are actually a limited resource. Whatever your eighth grade teacher taught you about only using 10% of your brain, which may have been true of some eighth graders, but generally is not true. You use it all in some way or another.